Hello and welcome back to part 5, the 5th video of this 8-part video series I'm calling 2022 Let's Preptober Together. Hi, I'm Kimberly Grymes, a science fiction and fantasy writer and author of Isildes, also the companion novella, The Red Ember Forest, and several published short stories. I'll leave the details of each in the description below so we can just kind of jump right into this video. We are halfway freaking there, and I feel really good about where I am with prepping this story, and I hope you do too. So get your worksheets because we are on the week 3, third week. Okay, quick recap of what this series is all about. I am using my Preptober checklist from my Etsy shop to plan out my NaNoWriMo writing project. This is an 8-part video series, so if you haven't watched the first 4 videos, I definitely recommend checking them out first. Okay, jumping straight in, the 2 check boxes for week 3 that we're going to be tackling in this video are the outline, the more elaborate outline, and world building. Okay, remember when I said that week 2 was the hardest week? Well, I still think it is, but if your simple outline is too simple, or you still don't have a clear idea of how you want your story to go, then writing out an expanded outline for your story may end up being more work for you. So the more stories you prep, regardless if it's Preptober or not, the easier it gets to go through each step of prepping and outlining a story. Okay, so let's dive in and get into the nitty-gritty of outlining our story. Write an elaborate outline on your computer. Follow a story structure like the 3-act story as a template. Wow, are we already in week 3? Dang, this week is just flying. A month is just flying by. Oh, okay. Write an elaborate outline. Okay, so last week, that's right. Okay, we did the simple, the really quick opening scene, inciting incident, midpoint, climax, and afterwards. We did the 5 boxes. That's right. Okay. Ooh. Okay, so this outline, the elaborate outline, I'm going to be using another packet worksheet from my Etsy shop. This is the 17 scene story outline, which is also available on Excel because that's how I use it on Excel. And I also made it available via PDF. I am just going to go through the titles for each page of the worksheets I have. So the first one is opening scene, and then second one is set the story up. So there's a page for set the story up, and then inciting incident, followed by first plot point, and then introducing your antagonist or facing your first story hurdle. Then comes your second story hurdle, the midpoint twist, and then your post midpoint reaction, the plan, supposed victory, the low point, forming a new plan, the calm before the storm, the big climax scene, and then afterwards. Okay, so those are the main worksheets. And then included are also epilogue, prologue, a blank sheet. That way you can, if you have ones you want to add to it, and then just an extra blank sheet. I am only going to go through the first few work pages here with you because going through every single one would just be like a 2-hour video. So let's just really quickly, I had gone through and I made some notes. For opening scene, it asks the point of view. Each sheet asks the point of view. And what is the MC feeling in this scene, in this chapter? And I wrote, because this is the opening scene, tired, angry at the world, she's lonely, and then the attitude of, this is my life now. The next box is setting. Where is the MC? She's on her grandmother's farm. I guess I decided it's grandmother. And she's doing chores. What is the lie the MC believes to be true? Okay, so with each worksheet, depending on the title, there's different instructions or different guides for you to answer to help with this specific scene. Blech. With this specific scene. Okay, so again, what is the lie the MC believes to be true? And I had written down here, she doesn't think she'll ever be happy again because she lost her parents, she lost her old life in Village A. She thinks one day she'll get her revenge on her friends because they were kind of involved in what happened back in Village A that caused her parents to lose their life and everything. So she feels like maybe that will bring her happiness. That is her want, where she wants to get them revenge. Okay, so in opening scene, the prompt at the bottom is, what is happening in the opening chapter? Hook the reader, create internal and or external conflict within the opening scene. And I wrote in the opening scene, Marissa is using her magic to help make her chores easier. She gets caught by her grandmother, who scolds her and tells her never to use her magic again anywhere that someone might catch her and see her. Okay, so we're establishing that she has magic in this opening scene. We're establishing that she really shouldn't be using it. Her grandmother scolds her because she doesn't want anybody else finding out that she has magic. So there's a lot of questions here that really the reader will be asking why, and they want to continue reading about what happens in this story. While I was writing the opening scene, I also made some notes on the side about the magic system. I need a magic system that doesn't require a lot of learning because there's no one to teach her. The magic has to come naturally somehow. So this was a food for thought for me. Okay, so the next page is set the story up. And the top three things are the same. Whose point of view are we in? What is the character feeling in the scene? And the chapter setting. Write as many descriptive words down about the setting. Then for this specific page, set the story up, it says, bring the reader into the character's world. Let the reader follow your MC as they reflect on the conflict that bothers them. Basically, you're pointing out what's wrong and how the MC feels about it. This is where you're drawing the reader into the world, introduce them to the bigger picture. Okay, so set the story up. I wrote, starting with the chapter setting, the weather, it's cold, overcast, it's a small farm, a collective of small farms in Village B. So Gran sends Marissa to the next farm over, the neighboring farm, to borrow something. I don't know yet. And this is where she meets the teenage boy who lives at that neighboring farm. And he asks who she is because he's never seen her before. And so this is an opportunity for Marissa to explain who she is, where she comes from, in her kind of attitude-y way, because remember, she hates the world right now. And so it's a good opportunity for backstory. She leaves. On the way home, she meets a boy, Wallace, and he explains he's camped out by the river on his way to Village A. So this is an opportunity for Marissa to react to hearing about Village A again. And then they part ways, says he'll be hanging around over by the river for a few days before moving on to Village A if she wants to come hang out or whatnot. So that is how I plan to set the story up. Okay, so now we're on to the third worksheet, and it is titled The Inciting Incident. Again, Marissa is the POV, What is the MC feeling in the scene? She's more curious now because she's met Wallace. And the chapter setting, she's gone to visit him by the river, so it's kind of his campsite by the river. Then it says, what happens that forces the story into motion? This is the event or the big moment when something happens that will force the MC to react. The MC isn't doing anything reacting yet, so they're acting within their personality, their behavior before their character arc. So they're still acting the way they normally would act. So here you're just writing about the incident. Okay. I wrote, Marissa wants to know why he's going to Village A. And then there's a bit of a time transition. So she visits him for a few days. I have here that she visits him for 5 days. And by the 5th day, she asks him why he hasn't left yet because he had said he was only staying for a few days. And he tells her something has him wanting to stick around a bit longer. So then the next day, she comes to the river and decides to tell him about what happened in Village A and about her magic. Okay, and one of the villagers, specifically the teenage neighbor boy, the boy at the next farm over, he sees Marissa using magic, and she then catches him seeing her, and she panics. But instead of being scared, the kid is more in awe and like, oh my God, this is so cool. So this is the incident that moves Marissa into a different path. So that is the inciting incident. Okay. And then it moves on to the first plot point. And so the guide here, I haven't continued yet, but I will. It says the start of the MC's journey or story. Now, write out the first steps your MC makes as they react to the inciting incident. The start of their journey or story. How do they plan to achieve their goal on this path? Remember, your MC reacts and thinks a certain way until right before the climax scene. It's then that their character arc will evolve, meaning their reactions and behaviors will change. So Marissa has to react at this point to the neighboring farmer boy seeing her use magic. So that would be the first plot point, is her reaction. Okay, real quick, remember there are lots of ways to outline a story. And right now I'm just using the 17 scene story outline that I have on my Etsy shop to help me outline my short story. And I'm using it in this video as an example of how you can take your simple outline that we did last week, and we can elaborate on it and just draw on more details of what's happening. So left off, the next step is antagonist or first story hurdle. So again, point of view, what the MC is feeling, describe the chapter's setting, and then now we're gonna go and say MC interacts with antagonist or they face their first story hurdle. Continue moving the story forward, keep the reader interested by introducing the antagonist or have your MC face a challenge along their journey. Remember, your MC reacts with familiar actions. They aren't behaving outside their comfort zone yet. Okay, so this is kind of where Marissa would not necessarily meet her antagonist, because the antagonist in this story is going to, it's kind of a combination of Wallace, but he's kind of not really a known antagonist. And then again, the villagers later when they think she is the reason somebody's dead. So in my short story, it would be more of the MC facing their first story hurdle. And I think that would be getting the grandmother to accept that the villagers are okay with Marissa having magic. So that would be the first story hurdle, getting grandma to be like, okay, you can use it. And then second story hurdle, kind of the same thing, continuing moving the story forward, have your MC react to their recent encounters with the antagonist or create another story conflict, forcing the MC to react. But again, remember, your MC reacts with familiar actions. They aren't behaving outside of their comfort zone yet. So I like to constantly remind this tip throughout the outlining process, because it's really important to keep your main character in their comfort zone up until they're forced out of it, until they realize this isn't working, I have to do something different. Okay, next is the midpoint twist. Be creative. Surprise the reader with an unexpected twist. Things just got real interesting. The midpoint twist is all about the unexpected events that occur. The MC reaction, or the aftermath, comes next in the next worksheet. So right now it's just the event. So for my short story, the midpoint twist is when the neighbor boy, the teenager, he dies, and it looks like magic killed him. So somebody had made it look like Marissa killed him. I mean, I think we all know who made it look like that, because the way I've been hinting at this other character. But anyways, okay, I don't want to spoil it. I do plan on, after NaNoWriMo and after getting it cleaned up and everything, I do plan on sharing the short story when it's done in my newsletter. So make sure you sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the description below. Okay, so next is the post-midpoint reaction. This is after they have discovered that the boy had died. Get inside your MC's head. Write about what's happening after the midpoint twist. How is your MC reacting or coping with what happened in the previous chapter or scene? Remember, your MC reacts with familiar actions. They aren't behaving outside their comfort zone yet. I know you're probably like, stop saying it, but it's really helpful when you're writing out your scenes there. Okay, so next scene is the plan. The character has to come up with a plan to figure out what to do after this midpoint twist and how they've digested everything that's happened. Okay, emotions are high and your MC wants to act. They're highly motivated and believe they know exactly what needs to be done to achieve their goal or desire. Here's where they form a plan to take on their antagonist. But remember, your MC is still reacting with familiar actions. They want to reach their goal, but within their comfort zone. They won't realize they need to evolve the way they think until after their low point. So right now I'm thinking Marissa, she wants to clear her name. She doesn't want people, coming after her with pitchforks and everything because she didn't kill the boy. And this is affecting her, that happy place she thought she was going to reach, because everybody accepted her magic and she was starting to get back to that happy place where she used to be back in Village A. So now she's trying to come up with a plan to clear her name. The next one is supposed victory. The MC's plan fails. Write about how the MC tried to execute their plan and how everything just falls apart. I mean, literally, it hits the fan. Okay, so that's kind of obvious. And then the low point. Doubt settles in. This is the low point for your MC. Really focus on how the MC is feeling, how they blame themselves for the plan going wrong. What else happened because of the failed plan? Okay, so that's that. You want to work out the low point of the story. Forming a new plan, the next one. A new confidence and a new plan. Something has happened to build their confidence. This is where the MC's character arc starts to evolve. They're still thinking and behaving with that familiar behavior, but now at least they know they need to make that change. Okay, and then the next page is the calm before the storm. The MC is moving toward the climax scene. This is when the MC goes to execute their new plan. Anything can happen on their way to face their antagonist. Be creative and keep the reader hooked. So this is the moments before the climax scene. And then you reach the big climax scene. Make the reader cry. Make the reader scream at your words. The MC is facing off the antagonist. It is now that the MC's character arc evolves. Their actions are outside their normal behaviors, and because of that, they achieve their goal and desires. There is a start, middle, and end to the climax scene. Depending on if your book is a standalone or a series, or short story or novella, You want to consider if your antagonist is truly gone at the end of this scene. That's kind of important, and it can be different for any story. I think that's why I kind of threw that in there. Okay, then afterwards. Finally reach the afterwards, the end of the story here. Reflection on the new MC and their victories. This is where the MC reflects on their journey and how they've changed. They no longer believe in that lie that they believe at the beginning of the story. What results of the MC achieving their goals or desires? If this is a series, what happens or is said that leads the reader into the next book? The antagonist was defeated, but maybe there's more, something bigger that the MC must face again or down the road. Okay, so I know that with my short story, the villagers will come after her, and Wallace has a role in kind of pushing her to leave this place, leave the negativity. She's not happy here, and so he really, really influences her to go back to Village A, because remember, he needs her to go back to Village A. So he really encourages her to find that happy place, but there. And so that is kind of how the afterwards happens. That's what happens. Yeah. Okay, so elaborating on my outline, taking it from a simple outline and then going in depth more for each scene. Check and done. I highly recommend checking out some form of outline guiding worksheets. Mine is on my Etsy shop. I'm sure there's a ton out there. So later in week 4, we're going to take this outline and we're going to elaborate on it even more and break it down into scene summaries, chapter summaries. So that is in week 4. So right now we're still in week 3. We just did the elaborate outline from the simple one. Now we're going to jump into world building. All right, so not so bad. I am curious to know, which was harder for you? Was it writing out the simple outline or working on the expanded outline to, put more into your story? So I'm curious to know. Let me know in the comments. Okay, let's move on to week 3. The second, I'm looking at my little list here. The second checkbox is world building. World building is always the tough one that everybody always wants to jump right into, but I recommend holding off until you have kind of more of an idea of where you want your story to go and who your characters are. That's why I put it in week 3. Okay, for world building, let's see. We want to pull our research notes from week 2 and look over what we had and what we can add from it. You want to write out a section in your research notes, whether it's on the computer or in a notebook, for all of your world building. Because world building is like research. It's something that you'll have to do continuously while writing your story, prepping it and during writing. But the idea here is to limit your world building during NaNoWriMo so you have more time to write. So create your worlds, plan out your settings, and any other details pertaining to your story. Do as much as you can now. And nothing is set in stone, so you just want to have a general idea to use as a reference. You'll want to be able to easily access your research notes and your world building notes for when it's time to start writing. Okay, so when it comes to world building, with my short story, there isn't a lot of details, like as much world building needed as when I write the actual novel, the full novel for this world. And even then there's, like I said, it's a Robin Hood themed world, villages, and very, very no electronics. I mean, it's old school, bows and arrows, swords and stuff. So for world building, I'm really just going to focus on the setting so much, not so much as the larger picture, maps and lands and all that stuff. Again, that would be for like the book. For your world building, you might have an elaborate story, like a science fiction story where you have worlds and governments and politics, and this is where you want to focus and break down as much information. So in a science fiction or a fantasy story, for a full novel, you might have more elements where you have to come up with a time system, or you might have to come up with seasons or terminology or races. Or if you're writing just a very simple contemporary, not really simple, but a contemporary story or a rom-com, or even a mystery, you know, things are set on Earth. It's a lot more easier because everything's already established. But you're still going to have to world build. And so now is the time to start writing down your notes about, you know, the world around these characters. You want to be able to have your reader really dive in and know where they are, what's around them, what's affecting the character in that situation and their circumstances. So take some of your favorite books and really draw on how the author brings the reader in through world building and how it's not just info dumping. You want to make sure you sprinkle it in. You're really, especially in the chapter 1, your opening scene, you want to make sure that the reader knows where they are, where the character is, and how their setting in this world relates to the conflict. So in addition to planning out the world around these characters in this story, you know, like the hierarchies, I don't know how to say that, you know, in the politics and the villagers or the high school principals, you know, where everybody is and how they're all related. You also might want to take this opportunity to very kind of get an idea of your world in a map sense. If you are writing if you're writing fantasy or science fiction, or you want to have an idea of start building your map and where everything is. Incarnate is a really great website to play around with map building, or at least to get an idea of where you want all of your locations and towns and villages and castles to be. If you're doing something like a town or a local city, something modern day, you know, you might want to plan out where things are in your town, where the high school is, where the town hall is, where the hospital is, you know, getting the idea for your story and visually seeing it. Okay, so you want to be able to have easy access to all of the world building notes and research you have taken. So you want to either compile everything into an Excel doc or some kind of spreadsheet document. And if you've saved other things in your files, you could actually link those files into your spreadsheet. So you can just click on it and it opens up your file. So spreadsheets are a great tool for organizing things such as world building, especially if you have a really elaborate world in your story. Again, for my short story right now, it's not very elaborate. It's not very detailed. When I eventually write the book, there may be more involved. Like right now when I'm writing my YA historical fantasy story, there's different countries, there's different towns involved and villages, there's different cultures. So there's a lot going on there. So there was a lot more world building in that story. But for my short story, I'm keeping it very minimal. I'm just keeping it to that Robin Hood village vibe. Yeah. So I'm not too worried about the world building for my short story. But consider all of the things that you will need for your story. Okay, so every genre within fiction, romance, mystery, historical, science fiction, fantasy, contemporary, you know, all kinds of genres, each one has different and its own world building. So consider what other authors have used in world building and then take from that and then build on your own. Make your world your own. So I think this is pretty much it for world building. It's a huge task, you know, for when writing novels. So there might be a lot more involved, but for my short story, there's not much involved. So I'm going to check it off and move on. Okay, so that wraps up the 5th video for week 3, the first 2 checkbox. Thank you for watching the 2022 Let's Preptober Together series. Don't forget, there's a 20% sale currently running on all of my digital download listings in my Etsy shop for the entire month of October 2022. So if you want to go get your copy of the Preptober Checklist or any of the other writing worksheets, now is the time to do it. Be sure to check out my books and short stories either on Goodreads, Amazon's, or my author website where I have all of the excerpts for everything that I have published. And don't forget to show some love for this video and ring that bell if you want to stay in the loop for future videos. Remember, you know what's coming. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep moving forward.